New York City has just elected a Democratic Socialist mayor, one who built his campaign on taxing the wealthy, freezing rents, and positioning himself as a champion of the working class. In his victory speech, Zoran Mamdani spoke about restoring power to people with calloused hands and scarred knuckles, the workers he says Manhattan's elite have exploited for generations. It was a message that resonated deeply with voters frustrated by rising costs, stagnant wages, and a growing sense that the system is rigged against them. But there's a layer to this story that many people haven't fully explored. Because behind the rhetoric of class struggle lies a personal background that raises difficult and uncomfortable questions. His mother is Oscar-nominated filmmaker Millionaire, whose estimated $5 million net worth comes from decades of critically acclaimed work. His father is Mahmoud Mamdani, a Columbia University professor who reportedly earns up to $300,000 a year teaching post-colonial theory to Ivy League students. This is not a family unfamiliar with privilege. They own property in multiple countries, including New York and Uganda. Reports suggest they have even listed a luxury Ugandan compound on Airbnb, despite Zoran's outspoken opposition to short-term rental platforms. So here's the question that isn't being asked loudly enough. Can someone raised in a world of film festivals, Ivy League academia, and international property portfolios authentically represent New York's struggling working class? Or is this a political movement led by someone who has only studied economic hardship, rather than lived it? Today, we are taking a closer look at the money. From his parents' wealth to his own financial reality. From Manhattan real estate to Ugandan land holdings. From elite salaries to rent-stabilized living. This is the full financial picture of one of America's youngest big city mayors in over a century, and the contradictions that define his rise. Stay with us, because the truth is far more complicated than either his supporters or critics are willing to admit. Understanding Zoran Mamdani's upbringing begins with his mother. Millionaire isn't just a filmmaker, she's one of the most respected voices in global independent cinema. Her breakout film, Salaam Bombay, earned an Academy Award nomination in 1988 when she was just 30 years old. From there, her career expanded internationally, with films featured at Cannes, Venice, and Toronto, some of the most prestigious festivals in the world. She won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival for Monsoon Wedding, becoming the first woman director to receive that honor. At one point, she was even offered the chance to direct a Harry Potter film, an opportunity she declined in favor of maintaining creative independence. Financially, her success translates to an estimated net worth of around $5 million. That wealth was built not through blockbuster franchises, but through decades of consistent work, directing, producing, securing grants, and earning royalties from films that collectively gross tens of millions worldwide. In Hollywood terms, this isn't elite-level wealth. But in the world of independent filmmaking, it represents remarkable success. More importantly, her work consistently focused on themes of inequality, identity, and marginalized communities. Films like Salaam Bombay and Queen of Katwe brought global attention to stories often ignored by mainstream cinema. But there's an interesting duality here. These films highlighted poverty and struggle, yet they also generated significant income for their creator. This wasn't exploitation, it was meaningful storytelling, but it still placed Mira in a position of financial comfort. That comfort translated into a lifestyle that included prime Manhattan real estate, international travel, and property ownership abroad. She purchased a Manhattan loft for over $1.3 million, later selling it for a profit. She also maintains a residence in Uganda, where she founded a non-profit film lab supporting emerging African filmmakers. This was the world Zoran grew up in, one where progressive ideals and financial success existed side by side. There was no contradiction in this environment, at least not internally. It was about using art to challenge systems, while still succeeding within them. That same dynamic appears again when we look at his father. Mahmoud Mamdani is one of Columbia University's most prominent scholars. As the Herbert Lehman Professor of Government, he holds a prestigious endowed chair reserved for top-tier academics. His work focuses on colonialism, political violence, and global power structures, positioning him as a leading intellectual voice critiquing Western imperialism. And yet, like many elite academics, he operates from within the very institutions he critiques. His estimated annual salary ranges from $200,000 to $300,000. Over time, that income, combined with book royalties, speaking engagements, and consulting, has created substantial financial stability. This career provided more than just income. It offered access to elite networks, subsidized housing in one of the most expensive cities in the world, and a level of cultural capital that few families possess. For Zoran, this meant growing up surrounded by intellectual debate, political theory, and global perspectives. Dinner table conversations weren't about making ends meet. They were about post-colonialism, systemic inequality, and the structure of power itself. This environment shaped his worldview, but it also insulated him from the very struggles he would later campaign against. Together, his parents' careers created a household worth several $1 million. Not ultra-wealthy, but firmly within the global professional elite. And that distinction matters, because it means Zoran didn't grow up worrying about rent, healthcare, or job security in the way millions of New Yorkers do. Instead, he grew up in a world where those issues were analyzed, studied, and debated, but not necessarily experienced firsthand. From there, his path followed a familiar trajectory for children of highly educated, affluent families: elite education. He attended the Bronx High School of Science, one of the most competitive public schools in the country. While technically free, admission requires passing a rigorous exam that often favors students with access to strong academic support systems. From there, he went on to Bowdoin College, an elite liberal arts institution with annual costs exceeding $70,000. By the time he graduated, the total cost of his education approached $300,000. Whether or not his family paid this in full, one thing is clear: he had access to opportunities that most working-class students simply don't. And that brings us to the most debated part of his story: his so-called struggling years. After graduating in 2014, Zoran pursued a mix of creative and non-profit work. He spent time working on film sets, attempted a rap career under the name Young Cardamom, and worked as a housing counselor helping families avoid eviction. On paper, this looks like the story of a young man navigating uncertainty, trying to find his place while making ends meet. And to some extent, that's true. But there's an important distinction. Struggle without the risk of collapse is very different from true economic insecurity. When his music career didn't generate income, he wasn't facing eviction. When work was inconsistent, he wasn't choosing between rent and food. Because behind the scenes, there was likely a safety net built from decades of family wealth. And that safety net changes everything. It allows risk-taking. It allows low-paying but meaningful work. It allows failure without long-term consequences. For many working-class New Yorkers, those options simply don't exist. That's where the core tension lies. Zoran Mamdani presents himself as a champion of the working class, and in many ways, his policies reflect that commitment. But his life experience reflects something else: a form of privilege that is subtle, sophisticated, and often invisible, even to those who benefit from it. And that doesn't necessarily disqualify him. But it does raise an important question: can someone truly represent a struggle they've never had to survive, or does understanding inequality require more than just studying it? Because in the end, this isn't just about one politician. It's about a broader pattern, a generation of leaders shaped by elite institutions, advocating for change within a system that has, in many ways, worked for them. And whether that contradiction is a weakness, or simply the reality of modern politics, is something voters will ultimately have to decide.